Well, considering the political environment we're in here in the United States, I thought it was time to talk about this. As the Far East erupts into chaos, a new leader appears in Japan. Caught in a crossfire between Asia and the West, will he be able to lead his country through this crisis? Fed up with the self-serving bureaucrats and ineffective politicians, the Japanese restructure their government under a new system. Voters will be able to directly elect a prime minister with expanded executive powers, who will be, in effect, the first president of Japan. Sakurai Kenshiro, a reform-minded independent candidate who was educated in America, wins the election. The incumbent prime minister, embarrassed at his loss, vows for revenge. Just as Sakurai prepares to take office, war breaks out in Asia, China, the United States, and the other superpowers begin to take sides and execute their strategies, and all sides attempt to use Japan as a pawn, where Sakurai implement his reforms while fending off both the entrenched bureaucracy and enemies abroad. So the manga starts out with, you see the President of the United States sitting in this office while there's speech from Japan's new prime minister is playing in the background, but you see that North Korea has assembled like 500,000 troops and are about to invade South Korea. So you have these most American names that I can think of. The Pentagon liaison, Louis Kingsley, the chief aide, Jefferson Spider, and then you have our president, Alex Carradine, Carradine. I guess that's how you say it. So while they're sitting there realizing that South Korea could basically fall in a day, and especially Seoul and everything, they're talking about how they're going to get Japan involved because they have a treaty with us. Then it's breaking up into monotony, and then you have Mr. Spider talking about how they know Mr. Kenshiro, who's about to be possibly elected as prime minister at this time, and talks about how he, went to Stanford, and that's how he got to know a lot of people, and how he was raised into politics there, and why he's basically a great candidate for the United States if he gets elected as prime minister, president of Japan. But also at the same time, he helped the current president when he ran for governor 18 years ago in California. He wrote the speech when the president wasn't looking too hot as a governor, and he turned it around. So he has to play his cards right, because if he doesn't, he will screw up and possibly the first and last president of Japan, which is not very good considering what's going on down in Asia. So as you look over the panels, you see that China wants to take Taiwan, and basically the world's going to be on fire. Well, let's go back to Japan, where you see our main character here. He's sitting in a movie theater trying to enjoy this while he ends up winning the popular vote and winning this election. He's just trying to sit there and enjoy life, and, he ends up seeing this movie, gets out, and then the paparazzi attack him, and just like everything else in Hollywood and everything else when it involves celebrity, they bombard him with a bunch of other things, and now his security's stepping in to give him away. As he gets in his car and drives away, he decides to call an old friend, Rachel, Spider's wife, and decides to let her know that, after flirting a little bit, that he's been elected president, and that joke he made 21 years ago has finally come to fruition. And then, as he hangs up the phone, Spider comes in, and you see Rachel crying, because they feel bad for him but happy for him at the same time, because he's got to deal with all these different fronts, and they're just worried and concerned for their friend. But as he's driving on after her, he's chatting with his driver, and he gets a call from this hostess club from a woman named Yoko, and as they flirt back and forth, the driver points to the screen as they're passing through Ginza, and they see the news that North Korea is invading South Korea. So now, as our newly elected president, not even officially sworn in, he has new duties to take on this new threat that is going to be a possibility towards Japan and their allies and everything they're going to have to deal with, because that's how politics work. So after that news, let's pan back to the office where he's supposed to make the speech and answer all these reporters. Well, unfortunately he's not there, so he got his public advisor, Morris Taniguchi. He's basically having them eat out of his hands, and he's basically come from a good background of helping with the president as well as getting stuff involved with the Olympics. He's a very good guy. So you see this breakdown of behind the scenes important people of his administration talking about how they're going to deal with these situations, what's coming up at hand, how the young people are now putting their faith into our main character, and it's just very interesting how they're taking a roundabout way but a good, interesting deep dive into the politics of Japan, as well as, you know, doing it in manga form as I'm holding it right here. So then we go back to our main character as he's driving to the Prime Minister's residence because he's trying to get this thing up and going so they can get ahead of the ball. And the Prime Minister's basically run away. He doesn't want to deal with it. He's trying to hold out his position as long as possible. Well, because of this and how idiocracy is run rampant in their parliament, as they put it, they're all looking like third-rate hacks to the world, and our main character wants to take care of that. He wants to fix it. So he gave an example when the Gulf War happened. The Japanese government didn't do a diet, like an emergency diet meeting. They just kind of went and celebrated with their constituents and were home and tried to avoid the problem. Well, our main character does not want that to happen, so he's trying to take a deep dive, going straight to the Prime Minister, who's running around with his head cut off, to try and cut this off. And basically they get into this big argument and a lot of things unfold, basically proving his point that he needs to change his government and he's got to fight all these stupid politicians because they want to keep ways things are. They're corrupt and everything you can think of. So we take a look at this residence. Like I said, the current Prime Minister is running around with his head cut off while he's trying to throw this election so he can stay in power longer. So now he's going to use the executive order to basically invalidate the election due to emergency times. That way he can stay in there longer and basically get rid of his opponent by doing a bunch of corrupt stuff. And most of his members are like, yeah, let's do this. But there's a couple that are like, no, this is against the will of the people. You do not want to do this. So the current Prime Minister's fine, we'll just do it another way. We'll cause a scandal, because that way we can hook, line, and sink the media, and we'll ruin his political career and he'll never be able to stand again. It's kind of like current politics too, now that I'm thinking about it. Really, should I be reading this now in this current form of, you know, political climate that's going on in the US? I don't know. But anyway, let's continue. So, on the way to the current Prime Minister's residence, he gets stopped by an old friend. His old friend grew up with him in this American high school, and you get a little bit of a backstory about how emotional he was and how of a good leader he is and how he decided to follow Ken this whole time. Well, he breaks it down. There's a bunch of people overseas. There's about like 10,000 people in South Korea, from tourists to permanent residents to people on field trips, that kind of thing. And then there's a certain amount in North Korea as well, and unfortunately 48 were shot and killed at the 38th parallel. So they got a bunch of different things going on, and they finally arrived to the Prime Minister's residence so they can finally talk to the press and deal with this matter at hand. So we take a look back at South Korea, where you see a bunch of people trying to break into the Japanese embassy to seek safety, claiming that, you know, they're Japanese. But the Japanese Prime Minister also stated that unfortunately the Self-Defense Force cannot get to them and are basically riding on the hopes of the United States. And the fact that there are probably 50,000 North Korean agents trying to sneak in and cause confusion and a bunch of other stuff. Go back to the current Prime Minister's location. You see they're trying to prevent our main character here, from doing his job. So now he's got to call in a favor, and he said it's time to wake up and give a shock to these old foxes. So Sakurai decided he's going to play this game. He got his friend Spider to basically call the United States, get the president to call him, try to force the Liberation Party in their hand to basically do what they're supposed to do and stop buying out and like actually go and save their people instead of whittling their way out and be corrupt. Well, unfortunately, it didn't work, and guess what? Sakurai has to pull one more thing. He said, all right, let me show the world what's actually happening, because we're fighting two wars on two fronts, according to America, because they're dealing with Taiwan as well as North Korea, South Korea situation. So Sakurai ends up showing the truth and seeing that all these people are dying, showing them that they're falling in front of the Japanese embassy and dying in the streets, and their government is actively choosing not to do anything about it. So now the news is broke out and everyone's in a panic. You have the Liberation Party pissed that Sakurai did this and want him revoked, don't want him to be the new prime minister, calling him a dictator, basically following and doing what the old prime minister is saying. When in reality, he's doing what he has to for the people. And now they're stuck between a sub and naval war between the Chinese and the US, because the Kitty Hawk and a bunch of other cruisers and subs are off the coast of Japan making their way, and then China's also sending their own naval fleet, and guess who's in the middle? Japan. So now our prime minister has to figure this out and handle this stuff at hand, even though he's not officially prime minister right now, by the way. So as his team is sitting here deciding this and listening to the arguments and the protesters outside, 20 public servers break into the office, well, push their way, they don't really break in, and they bow down and say, we want you. The current president is just worried about himself, doesn't care about anyone else, wants to protect his privilege and everything else. You want to protect the people, and we want you to break the mold, and we will serve you and do whatever you need to do, which is kind of outstanding that his own party, his own workers are breaking off to come and work with him, which is kind of nice. So we go back to the prime minister, and we see that, I'm talking about the old prime minister, that the war between China and Taiwan has officially broken out. And after the news does their story, basically China lying said that Taiwan attacked them, they get a call from the president of China and said, hey, I don't want you to let the US use your bases. I want you to do what we say. And the current prime minister is freaking out because he can't do that. And then the next thing you know, there's a ballistic missile coming for Tokyo, which it doesn't land in the city, it goes straight in the water and explodes. And unfortunately, you know what happens. The world now knows that Tokyo, well, Japan itself is now a target and being brought into this war, whether they want to or not. So as the news is making the cycle of everything that's happening, how everyone's looking up to Ken and how he's looking great, they break news that there is a ballistic missile launched towards Japan, and it's insane. What happens is the United States has everyone active, ready to go to see where it lands, and then they're now trying to get in talk with China to see what's going on, and depending on their statement and why they're doing this, they're going to fire stuff back at them. It's just going to be a whole war. The world is on the brink of world war, and it's wild to see this. And that's where I'm going to leave it at. It's halfway through chapter 5. It basically breaks through going through the rest of the party, how, you know, our main character is dealing with the situation, how fumbling the current prime minister at this time is. For a 2003 political suspense drama, this was really good. I did not suspect this to be as good as it was, and it turned out to be really good. I was very happy with it. The art is very good, like, still holds up to this day. I can keep saying very good over and over again, but for the art to be able to hold up, what, 22 years later, this is actually really nice and detailed artwork that we really don't get much anymore. A lot of people tend to skip the backgrounds, not actually put a lot of detail into it, where this is very good about the background characters, very good about the environment around it. The plot is very solid, and since it's from 2003, it's a reason why they keep referencing the Gulf War, because that was the most recent thing at the time, and, you know, they actually do reference real-world events on what happened around then and how the Japanese government was involved and so on and so forth. So I do recommend this. I believe there's like 4 volumes, possibly more, that came out in English. I'm gonna go pick up the rest. I got a lot right here in front of me on eBay. So if you want something different and you can find it, I recommend picking this up. This was something completely different, and as a first manga review of the year, and considering what's happening in America and how this is kind of similar to what's going on, it's kind of wild. Let me know what you guys think. I didn't think I'd start out with a political drama at the beginning of the year, but who knows? It's a brand new year. I'm just trying to get some manga reviews to you guys as well as other content, and I actually thoroughly enjoyed it. So let me know what you guys think. I love you all. I appreciate you all. And don't go starting wars. I'll see y'all later. Bye-bye!